Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And before we continue in the fourth part of this series, but the second part of the Event 201 exercise that took place in October 2019, I think it's only fitting that since we're talking about a fictitious coronavirus outbreak tabletop by a bunch of bureaucrats and minions of this technopoly set up by the predator class, right? Before we, get back into it, right where we left off in their trade and travel, I think that we have to do just a quick update. Now, I'm going to do a full video on all the updates out there, but Cuomo is still in a press conference right now. And I saw it last night. Hashtag President Cuomo was trending on Twitter. And admittedly, the guy is very good and comfortable in front of a camera. But that doesn't mean he's any better of a leader or that he's telling you the truth. This man is essentially reading off a script. And he's doing a good job of it. I'll give him that. I see why people are leaning towards him. But if you've been following my coverage, this guy was cracking jokes about hand sanitizer that was made by the prison system. And by the way, right now, one of those updates is that I believe it's 17 people who are staff over at Rikers have now tested positive for COVID-19 and something like 40 plus prisoners. We've had prison riots in several other places. We've already let prisoners go. Do you think that's just going to solve itself and get better out of nowhere? The military has been deployed in New York. And one of the things I wanted to point out before we get into the exercise, because after this trade and travel segment, we're going to get more into, how they're going to address it. And if you see here, the Army Corps of Engineers, remember, now this containment point, it's gotten better all of a sudden. No, it was selective testing from the very beginning to get your military there. All right. And in these four places is where you're going to see large-scale military facilities and hospitals. And again, they're going to retrofit dorms at Stony Brook and SUNY Old Westbury. Same with the Javits Center, but you got to understand the Javits Center is also huge for staging, military gear. Forget about just hospital gear. You got to be thinking outside the box on this one, guys. For instance, again, the big thing trending today is that they want to take away your constitutional rights. They've already done it. All these emergency acts that have already been passed and the fact that continuity of government is already in play should let you know you really don't have any constitutional rights at this point. I'm not saying we should give them more. We should definitely be fighting back, but we should have sounded the alarm bells some time ago. So before we get back here, let's review, for those that are catching up, what Event 201 is, who they are, where this was put on, and where we are in this tabletop exercise of unelected representatives of the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the Chinese CDC, the American CDC, the American National Security Council, NBC. You get the picture? A bunch of business people that aren't treating you like human beings. They're worried about what? The economic aspects of this, the control of the people, the predator class interests. And what was this tabletop exercise for those joining us for the first time? Well, this was put on in October 2019 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in association with Johns Hopkins University. In fact, the man in the middle, Inglesby, I think it's Thomas Inglesby, he's the only one that really knows the script other than the other players because they have like fake news segments and coming up. So everybody else at the table is supposed to be raw. They're raw. They're going to make suggestions on how to contain this thing. Well, it happens to be what? At Davos, the World Economic Forum, and it's a coronavirus outbreak that originated from a pig. Now, this one starts in South America, doesn't start in China, but all the same implications are there. They talk about how social media is breeding conspiracy theories. They talk about controlling panic. They talk about containment. You have military personnel here. It's quite nauseous. And the parallels of what's going on right now are, just unbelievable. So At this point in the exercise, what are they promoting again and again and again? Globalization, world government. And right now you had the former member of the National Security Council. And remember, these people get jobs as what? Lobbyists, people in NGOs, the privatized security industry, what's often, outsourced by our CIA, our FBI, et cetera, for these things. So basically now we need global cooperation. We need to bow down to some kind of global institution. Oh, see, I keep hitting that button. I'm in the wrong spot.
As opposed to country by country.
Coordinated is what I'd say.
Coordinated, okay. Yes, Adrian, and then we'll go to George.
Just heard from my staff, in fact, we need to differentiate between trade and travel, because what we're seeing now is we're substituting one medical crisis for another medical crisis. We can't get the precursors for our drugs shipped to manufacturing plants to be able to supply other conditions, not just this outbreak.
And for those that don't know who this gentleman is, this is one of those big pharma representatives, okay? And they've talked about antivirals, but really pushing a vaccine. But a vaccine won't be there. They're making you beg for a vaccine. And the antivirals they're talking about are HIV drugs, okay? And if you haven't noticed, in the real world, they are talking about hydrochloroquine, right? But if you look at the side effects of that, yikes, I might want to take my chances with the virus. And the other thing is, Dr. David Ho, the man that cured HIV and AIDS in 1996, if you were rich, you got on a cocktail of protease inhibitors, antivirals. That was for the rich people. The poor people got AZT, and it compromised their immune system, and they died. They're treated like animals, like we are being treated now. Go look into it. I mean, I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. He was on the cover of Time magazine as the Man of the Year. For those that thought that, this wasn't actually managed for rich people, just like rich people can get the tests, just like Tom Hanks and his wife can get tested, can get quarantined, and then get released. They can afford it. They can afford it. Again, I'll believe this isn't some type of bioweapon when a billionaire goes down, when Bill Gates drops dead, or, I don't know, someone like Sheldon Adelson or George Soros or Ted Turner or Michael Bloomberg. One of those guys goes, those pro-eugenics guys, Prince Philip even. Prince Philip's already on his deathbed, right? I think he'll survive the plague. Jacob Cabay says, people are sending me back this article when I send them Event 201 information. I know discussing how this started a way to cause more chaos, but just want to see what your opinions. I applaud you. I don't know what article it is because I can't see it. You got to DM those to me on Twitter. So let's get back to this guy because he's talking about what? The antiviral drugs.
And so we need to think about what is travel. Is it non-essential travel? Is it business travel? I think we have to be clear about are all countries created equal in terms of risk. We need to have real clarity of communication around that if we're going to maintain our medical supplies globally.
And for global business, for your company, where should that communication be coming from?
It should be coming from respected authorities. So it should be coming from CDCs, WHOs, departments of health, and then we should promulgate those as an industry, as we already do through organizations like International SOS, so that we have that risk clearly identified.
All right, so just so people understand what you're seeing here, okay, they're what? Bow down to global government. Bow down to the WHO. The WHO said there wasn't human-to-human, any evidence of human-to-human transition back in January. Again, they're treating you like children. And the article this guy just sent me, and I appreciate the super chat. I do, Jacob. We're going to go over it right now. New coronavirus wasn't predicted in simulation. First of all, let's talk about it. Because if you watched the actual first thing, I said there were variations on the script, right? But what did they call it? It was a novel coronavirus that originated in a pig in South America. Okay, and it attacks farmers first, but it goes global. I said the parallels are there. So they can say they're fact check or whatever, but we're going through exactly the tabletop exercise. And the same people you saw from the WHO in their little presentations are the same people that are on TV now, brother. So they can say it wasn't predicted, but you would have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not realize that there are so many parallels with this. Listen, of course it wasn't COVID-19 from China, but again, what are they doing? They're preparing you for this. This is preparing the public. This is actually preparing their war gamers. So we're going to go back to that after this super chat here. Stephen Chase, thanks for the time and hard work doing this in-depth review of this unbelievable Event 201. Much love to you and yours. Yes, and they're talking about managing social media. That's reflected in the real pandemic. What else are they talking about? They're talking about fascism over and 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 again. Right now they're talking about fascism. That's what this is. This is the combination of the government and really the military-industrial complex and big business and big pharma. So, you know, it's the same thing that's being talked about in public now. Come on. Well,
So you raised the question of essential versus non-essential. I just would ask the group, what is essential trade and travel? Do we have a common definition or even the beginnings of a definition of what should be essential trade and travel?
Well, it will
WHO
depend on the
has a list.
context.
WHO, we
That's a
should use
list of
WHO's list
essential
For
trade and
medicines.
travel.
Yeah.
for medicines and supplies or for all trade and travel?
No, it's just medicines.
Medicines,
But,
okay.
so this guy, look at the smirk on his face. This is the World Bank representative. Now, to do a little rewind for people, you know, he wants to help those second and third world nations, and he's going to refinance loans and basically take a part in their infrastructure. His words. You know, they're going to be partners in their infrastructure. So again, what I keep telling people is the market is dead. You know, they're talking about the trade stuff, how they're going to keep the market going. No. At the end of the day, organizations like the one this guy represents, this piece of human trash, they're going to scoop up already. Listen, think about how much the U.S. military-industrial complex and the World Bank and the IMF has already exploited second and third world nations for their resources. This is the dude that's just telling you we're going in Tyrannosaurus Rex style and taking it down to Chinatown.
I think it's the right question.
Okay. I'm sorry,
Can't
George.
hide his
Yes,
blade.
I got some information from my side. It looks like some countries already banned travel, and it looks like also in China we have a few hundred cases and also have a dozen death cases. But look at the data so far we collected. Looks like, you know, think about the 2009 pandemic, H1N1, and also Ebola. Of course, you know, if can stop everything, you know, it looks like the numbers would decrease. But you have to balance between the trade, travel, economics, and you know, the social activity, everything together. So in my opinion, think about H1N1 and Ebola. Maybe risk communication and public understanding the whole situation is more important than ban of the traveling and everything. So this is, I would agree with Matthews, you know, spread the knowledge, you know, to the public by
propaganda. Okay? Think about it. Think about the slow rollout of information that they've been giving you. I'm not Nostradamus. Go back to my videos. You know, again, a lot of people wanted to go after me for yelled at me for having Shepard Ambellas on. Other than the mortality rate and a few other things, I mean, he was spot on the timeline of, you know, the declarations of soft martial law, and it looks like militarized martial law in some places as soon as tomorrow. I mean, it's already been announced. You know, FEMA has already been deployed in 50 states. The National Guard is already not only all over New York, all over Florida, you know, all over Maryland at this point. Really, a lot of the East Coast. And, you know, Cuomo was talking about bringing hospital workers in. You know, people are getting those emails. They want them to relocate to these makeshift hospitals. So when they tell you, you know, we want to get the knowledge out, we want to spread it. No, often they spread fear. In this case, they spread disinformation throughout this and assisted China. And there was no one trying to get into China for the hard story of what was really going on there. You notice that? And there's no one really in American media that went in and really tried to get the hard story from Italy. You're starting to see bits and pieces. I actually shared an NBC piece where you're seeing inside some of these hospitals, right? Instead, what did they do? They propped up the market. A bunch of them made a ton of money. These senators are the tip of the iceberg. And they're encouraging us to go into lockdown and full-scale martial law. And globally. Globally. And they want to print a bunch of money. And think about it. Anybody who's a realtor right now who owns property, wants rent, they're not going to get rent because people can't work. Cuomo, again, I'm not sure if delivery food is still up and takeout. That still may be an essential service, but everything else is like 100% of the workforce in any kind of gathering is done. They've stopped it. Anthrax Attacks Part 2, hype is a cover. It's not Anthrax Attacks Part 2. Other than the fact that, again, you can't believe that this is from China. It's not a Chinese virus. You can't believe that it's an American virus like the U.S. military-industrial complex released this either. Obviously the evidence points to it being a bioweapon out of some lab. But as I've been saying to you guys, you got to think outside the box, outside the nation state. You got to start thinking about think tanks like PNAC back in the Rebuilding America's Defenses days in 2000, even talking about using bioweapons. And right now, I think that this is worth noting. While we will go back to this in a moment. But again, mainstream media hyping this is so ridiculous. They're now telling you there's actual paperwork, okay? Government paperwork suggesting that neo-Nazi groups are going to use the coronavirus as a bioweapon against you. I mean, the propaganda is going to be deep, and those trusted news sources and government outlets are going to be pumping the bullshit hardcore. They already are. They already have. And this is that exercise. Look, we need to control, we need to control everybody. Come on. Look at Cynthia McKinney's Twitter. Cynthia McKinney, I've interviewed. We actually DM back and forth about this. I'm not saying that we have the same opinion, but her and I have been sending stuff back. Last week, I was really in touch with her. And so, listen, I love Cynthia McKinney. She's in my films, Loose Change Final Cut and Fabled Enemies. Again, we can't really debate at this point that the virus is real. All right, it's real. We can debate all day how many people are infected, asymptomatic, whether it's a 0.6% death rate, mortality rate, whether it's a 3.6%, whether it's a 10%, et cetera. Again, the death rates seem high because they're not testing people. I don't think the death rates are that high. It's the response that I'm talking about. All right? So if you're not going to test all these people, and you got 14 million people there, and you're telling how many are going to get infected, you've already poisoned their brains. That's more of what this really is than anything. The psychological operation that this is rolled out. Again, slow motion 1929 meets 1984 meets 9/11. We're watching it. Global, transformative, human event.
Mobiles, all this, accessible device.
Thank you. Sophia,
Can
did
I-
you want to comment on that? Sophia
Yeah,
and Brad.
I want to agree with that.
Okay.
And my staff have advised me that basically the level of support for travel restrictions is somewhere between 57 and 90%. Now, we all know politicians will be influenced by the general view in the community, but we can use that in a positive way. The truth of the matter is, if we find ways to retard spread and if we can work with people, so what we're doing is, one, consistent with meeting their concerns, but we do it in a way that actually meets the science need. And we have done this with Ebola, we've done it with flu. So we've got history here, but we need to do it in an orderly and in science-informed way.
Okay. Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you. And just a note that the UN is now concerned that the travel restriction is now impacting countries that have not even reported any cases, and recommends that member states actually follow the WHO guidance, and that means not to implement a travel ban. I think.
So again, right here, it's the UN, it's the WHO, it's globalist organizations. Let's see. If they keep the grocery stores open, then it's going to be just fine. Hunker down, you heard. Like, no, it's not going to be just fine. Listen, again, let me explain something to people that think this is cool or they think they're taking down the deep state. No. They're openly taking away your Constitution and Bill of Rights. They've already done so. Again, these headlines, they want to suspend. They've already done it. We're not even hanging by a thread anymore. They're putting it right in your face. There is no deep state takedown. Yeah, again, watch Trump when he's talking to Pompeo, ex-CIA guy, and he says, I like to call it the the deep state department, right? And then Pompeo says something later about we're exercising this. So again, they've known what the impact was going to be for a while. That's why insider trading happened, et cetera. It happened on a much higher level than the one being exposed in government. Those are little minions, little Muppet, puppet, little predator class minions. They just say whatever and do whatever. The real players, boy, did they make out. Boy, did they make out. And they're going to make out even more on the backs of us, the serf class. So, no, it's not hunkered down, okay? If we're not speaking out about this now, we're never going to get another opportunity to. If you don't see the mechanisms of globalization coming in, and by the way, Trump, when he says the exercising things, he says, well, you should have told us. Trump doesn't hear anything they don't want him to. Anytime he gets hair on his nuts, like to leave Syria and say it's time, what happens? What happens? Some false flag attack he can't acknowledge anymore. The OPCW exposed the Duma attacks as not happening. Where's the Trumpster talking about that? Huh? He's not. He's not. And he should have. And he should have if he wanted to be real. But once again, he's going to bow down to globalism as well. And that's how it is. So, stop believing in fake heroes, guys. You got to be your own hero.
It goes back to the communications point that has been made around the table about the informed travel, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, we've reached a point where travel discussions and bans, whether it's personal or commercial, is affecting supply chain, and there's fear and panic about ships and coming into docks and supply. So it's starting to interrupt supply chain. So we have to just be cautious at this point in the time of the crisis that it's not just about travel, because now it's spreading to supply chain issues, because countries or even companies are saying don't let that ship come into the dock because it's coming from an area that's right. I think so. We can't be siloed in our thinking about it's just travel ban right now. Right. So it's starting to affect a broader part of the crisis.
So for those of you who work in the global supply chain, what kind of strategic interventions are going to be necessary to keep trade and travel going? Are we going to need to have government bailouts of companies, or are companies going to be able to make it through this crisis?
All right, we're already talking about bailouts, by the way. They've already been done. And not only just for companies, for people. And moratoriums on rent and evictions. I mean, unheard of stuff in reality. Again, gearing you up. Jay Snyder says, watch for internet censor kill coming. I mean, they've talked about it. And in this, they talk about it. And again, if you watched the second video I did, the end of the first segment, the last thing they talk about are rumors and conspiracy theories on social media. And we've already seen a restriction. We remember that first day that Facebook tried to implement their restriction on coronavirus, and it was just banning all sorts of pages, all these mainstream articles that had been around for years, all these posts got deleted, people that had never have had a post get deleted. Yeah, man. And at the same time that happens, false rumors start, like the internet is unlocked. Google has unlocked it, all fake. Anybody who did 2 seconds of research, I mean, when I jumped in there, no, the floodgates weren't open. That's nonsense. Have discernment, and I'm with you. Listen, that's why I'm going so hard on this. Anybody who's been following me on this, these aren't my favorite videos to make. But I'm getting back in my groove. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm ready to fight this as hard as I can. And I don't want to sacrifice me or my family's lives for a rich man's war against an invisible enemy. For a bunch of bureaucrats and globalists and minions to sit there and decide my fate. I didn't vote for any of these people. They're not part of my republic.
For example, Lufthansa or others in your industry, are we going to need subsidies, liability, remediation, countermeasures? What's it going to take to keep Lufthansa flying?
I mean, first of all, it is really that we have open communication, that we try to convince, as Sophia said, governments not to ban each other, especially if it's countries that are not affected. We realized it. I take again the example from the SARS crisis. Hong Kong was heavily affected. We had good communication with the government there, with the CDC, and we could find a way to maintain operation, although it was economically a nightmare, 20% booking figures in the planes for certain periods.
So you're flying planes with 20% 20% bookings?
Yes, but
How long can you?
we kept flying. Okay, that time it was one destination. If it's worldwide 20% booking figures, we have to adapt the network. We will not maintain this for several weeks. That's the case.
Let's just think about that. Now, in this tabletop exercise, he's talking about just commercial travel being down 20% globally, and they can't maintain that for weeks. Guess what? It's been way down from 20% globally the past few weeks. Way down from that. It's about to get worse. Again, listen to the language these people are using. De Blasio, Cuomo, even Trump now. This is worse than 9/11 for the airline industries. Think about the impact after that. And you can't just keep printing money out of nowhere with nobody spending and nobody working without a complete economic collapse. And remember what they did in China. Again, closing off 60 million people, right? And then bringing the Uyghur Muslims in after the factories had been shut down from West China to man those factories of Apple to get the supply chain going. I don't want to say just Apple because there's 80 of them. I mean, BMW's on there. Let's see, Jacob Cabby. Netflix said it'd be streaming in standard definition because of the stress on the bandwidth. Could lead to even more restrictions on internet access. Yes. All right, so here, it goes even beyond that, right? There's going to be opportunity here for, I would think, people like me, number one, not only because I'm telling the truth, because more people are going to be in front of screens than ever, right? But then you have the restrictions, and I've already seen videos being taken down by creators. I'm a small fish right now. All right, I'm a very, very small fish compared to other people. But I have backup platforms. Now, not everybody's going to be able to follow me on those backup platforms. That's why it's important to get me on Twitter, because everything I go over is also posted there in raw form where you can read the documents or check it out. So again, I'm just paralleling that this guy's just talking about 20% of the airline industry, when in reality now we have a situation that's much more dire. Oh man, I keep hitting that thing and I keep being in the wrong spot. Thumbs this video up, subscribe, and share, by the way. Join the Burmese Brigade if you're new.
But that's why it's so important. And once again, with Sophia, we have to spread this out clearly. Countries that are not affected should be served on a normal basis. Countries that are affected should be served on a adapted basis, what is necessary, but still should be served. And we need a clear and open communication. Jane mentioned it as well. What is essential, what is non-essential travel? We have to clarify this. Otherwise, if we go down to 20% bookings over a long period, the company will run down. That's a fact.
I should just say on this chart, this is the information that we have, but I think most public health experts presume that there are cases in many more countries. So I think it would be false reassurance to say we can keep flying to this country because there are no cases. We don't know that there are cases, but we believe that there are cases. They haven't been detected yet.
So let's stop that there. You see that caution right there? We didn't even go there in reality, right? It wasn't until after the fact of confirmed cases that, for instance, SUNY abroad, students were brought back, etc. And Pompeo, again, he lets you know that if you're outside of the country, you're not going to be able to get in soon. What's that mean? National lockdown. We've already seen the borders, the south and north borders shut off. I got 2 super chats here. John Eater says the Fourth Reich is on. What will we do? It's a good question. I don't know what we will do right now. But again, when you have a system, a national security state, that was really empowered post-World War II, when you have an intelligence system that was erected by literal Nazis, along with, a military-industrial complex that includes NASA, right? And you had somebody like, Eisenhower, who was very much a part of that military-industrial complex, name it, warn you about it, and then the next president seemed to try to fight it on some levels, and he got his head blown off. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't have a crystal ball. I know I'm going to stand up for my rights. I'm going to speak out against this as much as I can. Let's see what we got here. Jay Snyder says, any thoughts on ID 2020? If you're talking about real ID and all that other stuff to get on a plane, or are you talking about the injectable one that people have started discussing? Let's see. I'm not really sure. Joseph B. Bandwidth issues also primes up 5G implementation. Yes, a lot of people, listen, and let's talk about 5G really quick. I do not believe that this is a 5G issue. I think that, yes, to pounce on it, they wanted to implement that for a long time. People haven't been paying attention. The satellites that Elon Musk and SpaceX have been putting up are satellites for 5G implementation. He ain't going to the moon. He ain't going to Mars. Go check out my past work. Go search Musk on my 1,000+ videos, and maybe you'll start to get it. So yes, 5G implementation is a very real thing because it brings in global automation on top of a lot of other issues. So you are correct. All right, let's continue on.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, I think I think it's really important to have a plan that identifies the dozen or 24 trade and travel sector players that need to get together and agree on how they're going to have a collective business continuity. And it's the sort of thing where you need the leadership of those industries to gather, and they have to come together in a way which perhaps is unusual, but where there should be some government incentive to collectively organize and perhaps help to buffer the crisis with whatever fiscal measures might do that collectively to make it clear that on the imperative for keeping the system moving. But I want to suggest that it's really important that that be done in a pluralistic way rather than a singular effort across all sectors. Because if there's some sense that there's a UN institution that can do all of this, then I worry we're suffering from a delusional disorder on the power of the UN. It's really important to get those industries and their trade associations and an efficient leadership established which is decentralized but has a collective responsibility and accountability. And that needs to be supported by...
I want you to understand what this guy's telling you. Remember, this is a representative of the World Bank. He's basically saying the United Nations isn't strong enough. We need to make them or someone else stronger. We need yet another unelected force to be at the head of this thing on behalf of we, the globalists. That's what this is. I mean, I don't know how you interpret it any other way. Where there was he worried about people and their lives? No, he's worried about, the finances and the power of the corrupt establishment.
the public leadership.
So government leaders
Yes.
should be behind that. Yes, LaToya?
I agree with that 100%. And looking at your business continuity plans and getting together with industries that subsidize what your company is doing, and using the government as a alternative or another method of understanding what's going on and utilizing their leadership, have it decentralized, because that way no one particular industry is getting more than the next. So that way it leaves everything even across the board.
I see. So industry should be, the travel industry should be broadly part of that
We need to be
discussion
broadly
about
a part of
coordinating
that.
international approach, okay?
Right.
Yeah,
I think we also need to think about the healthcare workers who are traveling to some of these countries on a normal basis. A lot of these healthcare workers from different hospitals that are going to provide aid on a normal basis for different diseases. Are we now helping them understand how to take care of those patients in those countries? And how do we make sure that we're not causing panic among the hospitals and other healthcare organizations like Doctors Without Borders or various hospitals that have global efforts to ensure that they're not causing panic and pulling their teams away from those countries that may really need them right now?
Okay,
And-
Sophia and then Chris. Or
I
LaToya,
just
did you want
want
to
to jump in on that, and to utilize companies such as ourselves that have a vast healthcare system within our properties. So that's one thing we've done before. We have actually mobilized. We have nurses and nurse practitioners that work around the world for our company, and we can mobilize them and assist in,
Let me just stop this here. There's been a lot of talk about nationalizing certain things here for production. And if you watch Cuomo's recent press conference, he's going to do it on a state level, basically, to start manufacturing these things. He's like, look, we're buying them outside of the state. We don't have the money for that. We need 30,000 ventilators. He called it an impossible task today. So, yeah, they talk about the cohesion of working with big government and big business, and you're going to see that with the big stores that are still going to be big time open. Again, I just don't know how, like, say, McDonald's is going to be open for takeout and delivery. They're not going to want you to leave your house. Eventually, this lockdown comes to where you're going to have a ticket to go to, like, the big stores to go get groceries. I hate to tell you. Ray Foley, at least in some areas, says, I'm involved with the movement for a People's Party, planned on going to Milwaukee for a convention, but looks like they're making protests illegal. Everything is illegal. You're not even supposed to be, again, what they suggest one day becomes illegal the next day. Okay, so when they tell you you can't have like, I have 5 people in my home for 4 people in my home. But apparently you can't have more than 5 people together anywhere in the country right now, or you're not supposed to. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I tweeted out pictures of playing basketball and people on the beaches. Again, they're suggesting it now. They're telling you it's not a good thing. They're making it illegal. They're not enforcing it yet. But make no mistake, these people are about to be enforced upon on a way this country and our generation has never seen.
Providing care.
Okay, Sophia?
Thank you. I just wanted to get back to your point about the non-reporting. And in some instances, it could come down to capability and capacities of the health sector in the particular country concerned. And I think this is where an organization like the United Nations can be of help by providing framework guidance that others could use and to help in the deployment of health professionals to those parts of the world that are lacking in the capability. But ultimately, governments have to be capable of asking for help and also to take action in themselves. The UN, I agree with Tim, can be there and in a supportive capacity to coordinate, to assist, but it will run into the question of sovereignty every time. And so governments need to be empowered and capable of helping their citizens.
Thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Tom. 2 points I'd like to make. One is to just second the comments that Adrian and Brad made about the need for us to distinguish between travel and trade and to really begin to focus, especially given some of the projections of 2 and maybe 20 million cases within 3 months, to really define what is the critical part of the global supply chain infrastructure.
So again, this is the Bill and Melinda Gates minion, okay? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're very loving. Bill Gates loves you. He's the best thing ever. He's not a megalomaniac. He's not somebody with insider knowledge. He's not somebody who's pro-eugenics and sterilization. He's none of those things. He's not a guy that wants to control the weather. No, 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 no. He's not that. Okay? So again, what is the critical infrastructure? And obviously the supply chain is big. And right now, Amazon and Jeff Bezos working with Trump and Trump saying he's great and he's doing everything. Remember, they're going to be there for the medical chain supply and the basic supply. They're going to be part of that. So hopefully, obviously, mail will be some kind of infrastructure, but, is the argument going to be made that since this can live on a surface, yada, 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 you could be infected that way? I don't know how long and how far the fear will fly. But we do know that there will have to be some kind of import-export system. We know the railway system will work that way. We know cargo planes will work that way. We know that ships will work that way. And again, since they've made emergency workers out of grocery store clerks, and those places seem to be hiring, by the way. No one's hiring right now, but if I go to a BJ's, they're hiring. You get it? So you'll have a choice of like the big stores to go to that can be occupied by law enforcement when you're allowed to leave your house. Pretty nutty. Pretty nutty. And you may only be able to leave your house with the proper mask that you may have to get and register for by your loving government. Does that sound fun to anybody? Does that sound okay? Doesn't sound that okay to me.
We won't have the drugs if we can't move the active pharmaceutical agents from one place to another. We really need to focus on what will it take to keep that global logistics infrastructure running. We've heard already that some workers are not willing to come to work because they're not confident they'll have the personal protective equipment. They need to be prioritized in terms of access to the countermeasures, et cetera. And that, I think the travel issue, we shouldn't use blunt instruments, have bans when bans don't work. make sure people are making informed decisions. If we go to 2 or 20 million cases, people are going to make decisions not to travel. And so we need to really focus on the critical infrastructure necessary to move health commodities, to move fuel to places that are going to require fuel to keep their hospitals running, to keep food
Plasma.
moving. You know, there's a whole complex set of issues in a highly interdependent world on supply chains that are just in time. We need to think about how much flex there is in that just-in-time supply chain system and make sure it keeps running. I think it's going to take specificity, and it's going to take knowledge that only the private sector has. The UN can play an important coordinating facilitation role, but the companies know where those commodities are, where they move, how to move them, and that's where a type of public-private collaboration that we have not generally had in these crises needs.
Fascism, globalism, world government, authoritarianism, nationalism. Okay? Nationalizing industries within the United States is going to become a very big reality very shortly. And again, how are they going to man all these factories? Well, a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are going to need to feed their family somehow. Who's going to have access?
To be put together pretty quickly.
Very similar to what Tim was saying, I think. I hear a comment.
But if I could just follow up on that, I think the complement might be mobilizing the G20 finance ministers. The reason the G20 got together initially was the Asian financial crisis. And it may be that, in fact, that there's a role for them to not only incent the private sector, but then also look what those complementary set of public sector financing measures could be, which would actually lower the bar or make it much more attractive to ride this out into the future in a way that companies are going to be able to get shareholder engagement, et cetera.
Thank you. Eduardo, your business is moving things around the world.
Yes.
What's it going to take to keep it going?
And just to underscore the point that cooperation among supply chain providers or businesses that have huge supply chains can add a lot of efficiency to the whole process and be protective of healthcare workers to make sure that even the delivery systems workers are also taken care of using multimodal, right? Air, land, and sea. So there could be a lot of cooperation with the Lufthansas and the UPSs and others throughout the world to really consolidate trade lanes to make sure that the commodities get to where they need to get to.
Does that happen now? Or is that something that has been imagined already and worked on? Or
No, I think that happens today.
It does.
You know, there is a huge freight forwarder network. You know, we do not land UPS brown tails everywhere in the world, so there are cooperations among companies.
So we could build
and
on
trade
those.
lanes. Yes.
Okay. Steve?
I think the statement about what would happen even in the absence of any government intervention, travel would decrease. People are not going to, they're going to know what the information is about where disease is and not travel there. I think that there is an important role for government to not make a bad situation worse. And that is largely going to be communicating valid and trusted information about where the problem is so that people can make their own decisions.
Now think about the valid and trusted information they gave you about the United States. Okay? I told you it was never a problem. They've said that the tests don't work. They've said ignore any of the positive cases in January. Okay? Have they given you trusted information, Mr. Representative of the United States CDC, in this case? Or are you just trying to control the public and the panic? Everybody's worried about the panic for your precious markets. Janet Zabrowski, did you see the German pulmonologists blow the whistle on the C virus stats are compiled and portrayed? www.coronafilm.com. Just so everybody understands, again, for the 100,000th time, for people not getting this, it doesn't matter how deadly the disease is. There's only about 4 more minutes or less in this, but let's talk about this because people just are doing mental circles to think that all this information is somehow going to save you. All right. So South Korea does the right kind of testing. They test a bunch of people that are either not infected or asymptomatic. So what do you get? You get a large-scale view of how many people can be infected, how many people are asymptomatic, how many people actually have to go to the hospital, and then how many people die. Now, those numbers are about 0.6%. That's about 6 times as deadly as the flu. Not great, but certainly would not get us to a point where we would have panic, right? But now the panic has ensued. And by the way, those numbers may not be correct. We don't know if those numbers are correct because we're not going to trust any nation state. We certainly shouldn't trust China's numbers. Now, what I can tell you is we are now to the point where they did selective testing in New York alone, where they're calling it ground zero, so they could build a containment zone outside of New York City. And now they're saying that curve's flattening, but they're telling you they're not testing asymptomatic anybody. They're not testing people that have symptoms in some cases. They're not testing postmortem bodies. So anybody who is giving you any kind of stats that are based on, say, Johns Hopkins University, that's sitting at the table we're talking about now, is not getting the real skinny. I hate to tell you. All right? I hate to tell you. Whether you like it or not, the response to this is where we are all in this together. I'm not here to preach to you about how you're going to get the virus or you're not going to get the virus or what cures it. I'll talk about the papers that are out there. I'll talk about what the people on the front line are saying. I'll talk about the mainstream articles. You're going to have to make your own decisions. We're human beings, right? But my decision long ago was I don't like authoritarian governments and quarantines. I don't like the censorship of information. I like the truth. Okay? And that's what I'm trying to pound down to you, that these people, again, have no obligation to the truth to you. And they war game this scenario in October 2019 on behalf of, again, Johns Hopkins, where all these numbers are coming from. The World Economic Forum, let's trust the billionaires and their minions, and Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, totally trustworthy. Totally trustworthy. Give me a break. Let's continue with the CDC minion.
And that whatever guidance the government, national governments do provide is tailored to what the situation actually is. I think there is a spectrum of interventions all the way from just saying, you know, hey, there's a disease here to something that exists today. If you're pregnant, don't travel to a malarious area. I mean, there are travel guidances in place all the time of that sort.
But let's be clear. People trust less and less what comes from government.
As they should.
Actually enabling many sources of information, Google, Facebook, the free-to-air media networks, ensuring that they are equipped, companies who will talk to their staff. And we know that very often these days people believe much more something that will come from their company than they will believe something that comes from government.
So listen, we need the disinformation to spread throughout the Google workplace, the Apple workplace. We need the minions of big tech to be as brainwashed as the general public usually is. We need to be lockstep in information. Forget about the fourth estate. Forget about challenging things. No, we don't want that. No.
Have to partner.
Yeah, I just want to say that we are actually going to get explicitly into communication shortly in a subsequent discussion, so maybe you could hold that thought for one moment. But just in closing, it sounds like there is a kind of a support here at the table for developing some kind of international coordinated approach for identifying the most important trade that's happening in the world, the essential services, for the collaboration between business and governments. Any final comment? Last 30 seconds.
I'd like to make a comment about the security of supply. Industries need to take a leading role in making sure that the key providers upstream of commodities for their final products, that there are simple things in place. Like, for example, if going to a factory is a dangerous place, what are we doing in the factories to change that? Are people wearing masks? Mm-hmm. So there are probably very simple things that industries and trade associations could work on for critical commodities.
Okay, well then we'll leave it there. We have to leave it there for time. Thank you all for your input. Our team, again, will take the board's recommendations and promulgate them widely to decision makers around the world. And this concludes this meeting.
Decision makers around the world. Nobody you voted for. Nobody you voted for. So again, that wraps up the second part of Trade and Travel, the fourth video in this series. There are 5 full videos, so I don't know if we're going to end up doing 10 in the series or whatever. Thumbs this video up, subscribe and share. If you want to support me financially, hey, please, I need cash just like you need cash. If you haven't been affected by this, you got a bank account, you weren't invested in the stock market, you didn't just got raped over, you like real information, truthful, I need your support too. Okay? And I can only tell you this. As a backup, obviously, we stream over here as well, over on Twitter. And this is where a lot of my information gets posted, a lot of the valid stuff. Okay, here it is, 38 positive for coronavirus. Over in Rikers, they already let people go. No, there never could be prison riots. No. Don't worry, the Maryland Guard says they're not there for martial law. We should trust them. We should also trust the establishment telling us the neo-Nazis are going to give us coronavirus. Bogus Hype says, hang in there, your family is in good hands. Yeah, man, I'm hoping. I'm going to do anything I can for my family. That's what you should be doing. I'm not just sounding the whistle for everybody. I made sure, in large part to you guys, that I over-prepared as much as I could for my family. And you should do the same damn thing. You should do the same damn thing. So again, guys, thumbs this video up, subscribe and share, join the Burmis Brigade. I hope we're going to continue to be on here. I do want to point this out. Remember last night I told you that I was surprised that my video, I think it was this one, the Event 201 exercise had got monetized. Again, the bots picked it up or it got reported. So I'm on total review request other than the thing I did for my buddy Scott Ledger, who I'm actually going to be on a program tonight, talking about Scott. But other than the confirmed for manual review all the way back on the 18th, 4 days ago, all my stuff is still under review. Review requested, and they don't, that basically unlists my videos. So share them wherever you can. Love from Belgium. Stay strong. Thank you, Raphael. Hey, we're always looking for an international perspective too. So again, hit me up in the DMs. Let me know what's going on. I love you guys, and I will continue to fight as hard as I can with my big old mouth, and I'll see you on the flip side.